When Clint Eastwood found himself in her service area, she had no idea that her world was about to change. Mia adjusted her apron, glancing at the clock above the counter. It was approaching 7 p.m., the time when the evening rush usually quiets down and the shift begins to wind down. For most, the small roadside cafe was just a stop for a quick bite before continuing their journey. For Mia, it was something more. At 28, she juggled working here with raising her 6-year-old son Jordan. Every tip and paycheck went towards maintaining their modest apartment and covering the growing list of school supplies for her son. She moved from table to table, her warm smile concealing the exhaustion that desperately tried to break through. Regular customers knew her story, or at least part of it. A few of them occasionally left a couple of extra dollars when they could. But Mia never asked for pity. She had long realized that the world was unfair, and the only choice was to keep moving forward. The bell above the door caught her attention. She looked up, expecting yet another weary traveler. However, instead of that, a man entered the cafe with such quiet confidence that the air around him seemed to grow heavier. He was dressed simply in a shirt and jeans, his roughened face partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Mia froze, and when he looked her way, she immediately knew who he was: Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood. Her breath caught. She wasn't a fan of celebrities, she just didn't have the time or energy for it. But this was different. Clint Eastwood was a true legend, someone her late father often spoke of when they watched old westerns together. In that instant, memories of those moments flashed before her eyes, but Mia couldn't afford to dwell on them. Clint settled into a corner seat, and Mia realized it was her turn to approach him. But this wasn't just any regular customer, and something about his calm presence made her heart race. Mia grabbed her notepad and pen, took a deep breath, and walked toward his table. As she approached, she noticed his hands, slightly weathered, yet steady, resting on the table. His piercing eyes, hidden beneath the brim of his hat, seemed to see everything but gave nothing away. He looked at her when she stopped beside him, his expression calm, almost unreadable. "Good evening," she began, trying to maintain her composure. "What can I get you?" He quickly skimmed the menu and set it aside. "Black coffee and a medium burger, no onions," he said. "A simple order." Mia wrote it down, but couldn't hide the slight tremor in her hand as she turned to leave. Clint's voice stopped her. "Tough night?" he asked. She turned back, surprised. Most customers didn't engage in conversation unless they were regulars. "Not too bad," she replied, offering a faint smile. "It keeps me on my toes." He nodded, his expression softening slightly. "You're doing well. Not everyone can keep up with this pace in places like this." She squinted, unsure what he meant by that. Was Clint Eastwood, the man famous from films, noticing her work? She barely held back a smile and returned to the counter to place his order. But in her mind, questions kept swirling. Why was he here, in this small cafe by the highway? He could have eaten at a much better place in California. When the food was ready, Mia brought over the plate with the burger and coffee. She carefully placed them before him, catching a brief look of gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply and quietly. "You're welcome," she replied, trying to appear casual, although the exchange felt unusual. While she served other customers, Mia noticed that Clint didn't rush to eat. He sat, almost contemplative, occasionally sipping his coffee. But somehow, it felt like he wasn't just here to eat. His presence had an unsettled quality that kept her on edge. He ate slowly, almost methodically, as if he had all the time in the world. And sometimes their eyes met, and he nodded, quietly acknowledging her presence. His gaze made her heart stir. When he finished, Clint slightly raised his hand, signaling for her to come over. Mia approached his table, trying not to show her nervousness. Mia approached the table with the question of whether everything was all right. He looked at her with a soft smile and said, "Perfect. That was one of the best burgers I've had in a long time." She laughed lightly, surprised by the compliment. "I'll pass that on to the cook, he'll be happy to hear that." For a moment, Clint fell silent, his gaze never leaving her. And in that silence, Mia felt like he was studying her, not with criticism, but with a kind of curious warmth that made her feel truly seen. "You have good energy," he finally said. "You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago." Mia froze, not knowing how to respond. Was it a compliment or a memory? She couldn't quite tell. "Thank you," she replied, feeling her cheeks flush. "I'm just trying to get through each day, like everyone else." He nodded, his eyes flashing with something Mia couldn't quite interpret. "That's the secret, huh?" he said. "Just get through, as far as you can." He took a few bills from his pocket and placed them on the table next to a folded piece of paper. "Keep the change," he said, standing up. "Read this when you have the time." Mia glanced at the paper, her heart pounding. "Thank you," she said, barely holding back her emotions, but Clint was already heading toward the door. As soon as he opened it, the bell rang, and he disappeared. Mia stood still for a few seconds, not moving, staring at the paper as if it could burn her hands. What did he write? Why was he so insistent that she read it? She had to push the questions aside. There were still a few customers at the tables, and Mia couldn't afford to relax. She continued serving guests, but thoughts of the note and its contents wouldn't leave her. Time passed, and when her shift was over, she hurried to the staff room. Once there, she pulled out the paper and unfolded it, nervously. Mia began to read, and with each word, her heart beat faster. "Dear Mia, I don't know much about you, but in the few minutes I spent here, I noticed something rare in you, true resilience. I watch how you manage this place with grace, even under pressure, and it reminds me of how much strength is in the ordinary heroes of this world. You remind me of someone who was very dear to me, someone who taught me to appreciate hard work and kindness." Mia felt her hands begin to shake as she continued reading. "I don't know your story, but in your eyes, I see that you're carrying much more than you should. So I want to do something for you, no strings attached." Mia stopped. What was he talking about? Why was he so sure? But she kept reading. "I've left you a small gesture that you can use however you wish. Whether for your child, your future, or just to rest. I hope it brings you at least a little peace. People like you deserve to be noticed." Mia opened the paper fully, and inside, she saw a check. Her gaze froze when she saw the amount, $10,000. It was unbelievable. She felt her knees give way, and she sat down on a bench in the staff room, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't just a sum of money. It was confirmation that she had been seen, that her efforts were appreciated. And not by just anyone, but by a legend, a man whose name millions knew. Mia continued sitting, unable to believe what was happening. Why her? What was she supposed to do with this gift? As she pondered, her thoughts got lost in emotions and doubts. Eventually, she decided not to keep it all to herself. She needed to share it. So she called her best friend Tasha, who had always been there for her. Wait. Tasha said when Mia handed her the note. "You're telling me Clint Eastwood left you this?" Mia nodded, unable to say a word. Tasha read the note, her eyes growing wider, and when she saw the check, she nearly fell out of her chair. This is unbelievable. Do you realize that this could change everything for you and Jordan?" "I know," Mia whispered, staring at the check as if she couldn't believe her eyes. "But why would someone like him care about someone like me?" Tasha grabbed her hands and said, "Because he saw you, Mia. He saw what I've seen for a long time. You work harder than anyone, and you never let life break you. People notice that kind of strength." Mia sat in silence, unable to shake the feeling that this was all just a dream. But Tasha was there, always supportive, and that meant a lot right now. "You deserve this, Mia," she repeated. "The question is, what will you do with it?" Mia sighed, placing the check on the table. It was a moment when she had to decide how to move forward. She felt that this wasn't just a coincidence, that this gesture wasn't just a gift. It was a chance to change her life. But the question remained, how could she use this opportunity to not just survive, but to truly live? That night, after Jordan had fallen asleep, Mia sat at the kitchen table. The check lay in front of her, and Clint Eastwood's words continued to echo in her mind. "You deserve to be seen." Those words resonated in her soul. How many years had she felt invisible? She had worked tirelessly to provide for her son, to maintain some kind of stability, but always remained in the shadows. It seemed like no one noticed her efforts. But Clint Eastwood had seen her. He had seen her strength, her perseverance. Mia thought about the future. What could she do with this money? Pay off debt, buy new things for Jordan, maybe even treat herself to a small break. But it was more than just money. It was a chance. A chance for her, a chance for her son. She picked up the note again and reread it. She thought about what her father had always said, don't let this world knock you off your path. He had believed in her strength. And now Clint Eastwood believed in her too. Mia made her decision. She couldn't let this opportunity slip by. She knew she had to act. And she began writing down ideas on a piece of paper. Perhaps it was time for her to return to college, to pursue the education she had long dreamed of. Or maybe she could create savings for Jordan's future. She could give him what she never had, an education, a better life. But one thought kept coming back to her, pay it forward. Clint Eastwood had changed her life, and now she felt like she had to do the same for others. Maybe she could help those who were in the same situation she had been. She could create a fund for other single mothers, help those who couldn't afford simple things like food or textbooks. She kept writing, thinking about how to use this chance to not only change her life, but also the lives of others. Mia knew it would be difficult, but for the first time in a long while, she felt hope. This wasn't just about surviving, it was about a new beginning. First her, then her son. And perhaps, she could do something that would change someone else's life. That thought stayed with her as she woke up the next morning. In the morning, with the early sunlight shining through, Mia stood in the kitchen watching Jordan play with his toys. The check and note were still on the table. But she had already made her decision. First, she called Tasha and asked her to look after Jordan while Mia figured out what to do next. Tasha didn't ask any questions, she had always supported her. Do what you need to do, Mia, she said. Mia thanked her, and feeling sure of her decision, she headed to the bank. The bank clerk looked at the amount on the check with surprise. Wow, that's a serious sum, she said, but didn't press for details. Mia just nodded, trying to hide the surge of emotions. When the money was transferred, she felt a strange sense of responsibility growing inside her. This wasn't just money, it was a chance. A chance not only for her, but for her son, a chance to change everything. After the bank, Mia headed to the local college she had long dreamed of attending. She had always walked by, wondering what it would be like to sit in a classroom again, to become a student once more. Now, she had the opportunity to take that step. She walked into the building with a slight flutter in her heart. Behind the desk, a friendly woman greeted her. Upon hearing that Mia intended to study accounting, the woman smiled and said, "You're in the right place. Let's get started." As Mia filled out the paperwork, she felt a rush of energy she hadn't felt in a long time. This wasn't just about her, it was about her future and Jordan's future. She could show him that nothing was impossible. In that moment, Mia realized that her life had already begun to change. Months passed, and Mia's life began to change before her eyes. She balanced working at the café with studying at college. Every day was hard, but now she had a purpose. She was studying for the future, for Jordan. And even though she felt exhausted, there was a determination in her step that she hadn't known before. Jordan noticed the changes. "Mom, you're studying now," he proudly told his friends. Mia couldn't help but smile when she heard that. But the changes weren't only about her. Inspired by Clint Eastwood's gesture, Mia decided to create a small fund to help others in her community. She started saving a small amount of money to assist those who found themselves in the same situation she had once been in. She helped single mothers, bought school supplies for kids who couldn't afford them, and simply supported those facing difficulties. It was her way of giving something back. One day, as Mia sat at the table studying her textbook, Jordan came up to her and took her hand. "Mom, do you think that man will come back to our restaurant?" Mia froze. The question took her by surprise. Would Clint Eastwood come back? She didn't know. But it didn't matter. his act, his words had already become a part of their lives. And that was more important than anything. "Maybe," she answered softly, stroking her son's hair. "But even if he doesn't come back, he will still be a part of our story." That was the truth. Clint Eastwood had become a symbol of change for them. He had given them not only money but also hope, confidence that they mattered, that their hard work hadn't gone unnoticed. Mia felt that his gesture wasn't just a gift, it was a lesson, not just to receive, but to give. In the following weeks, Mia continued her journey. She began to feel that everything was changing, not only her life, but also her son's. She believed they would be able to overcome any challenges. It was a process that wasn't easy, but every morning, as she woke up, she felt stronger than before. And even though there was still much ahead of her, now she knew she was ready. And then, sitting at the table with her textbook in hand, Mia realized that she wasn't just surviving, she was living. With each passing day, she was getting closer to her goal, and most importantly, to the life she had always dreamed of for herself and for Jordan. And perhaps, someday, she would pass on that strength to others, just as Clint Eastwood had passed it on to her. Sometimes, as she walked past people, Mia caught herself thinking that she could become for someone else what Clint Eastwood had been for her. It wasn't just charity, it was believing in people, in the idea that even the smallest actions could change someone's life. In that moment, looking at Jordan, she understood she had made the right choice. And when she met a new visitor at her cafe, she greeted him with warmth and kindness, as she always did. Because Mia knew, sometimes one kind word or act can change everything. Sometimes you just need to see a person, notice them, and that already means a lot.